Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and our program, Get to Know. I'm your host, DP Lyle, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Kathleen Antrim.
Thanks, Doug. It is great to be here. And I'm really thrilled to have this next guest. He is what we like to call in the business a debut author, and he has come out of the gates like a racehorse. His first book has been nominated for an International Thriller Award. And I mean, just talk about a page turner. Welcome, Steve Urszenyi. It's nice to meet you. Well, meet you. I know you. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Kathy. It's been a while, but it's great to see you. And Doug?
Yeah. So I'm really excited about your book, Perfect Shot, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. But first, I want to talk to you about a question I like to ask writers. What was your childhood like? And do you think that your childhood contributed to you becoming a writer? Did you have imaginary friends? Did you tell stories? Were you introverted or extroverted? Share with us.
I had no idea psychoanalysis was going to be part of the process today.
It's always that way with Kathy. It's either that or purse
Yes,
shopping.
yes.
It's one of the two.
Or purse shopping, that's right.
Yeah.
Or lipstick
Yeah.
shopping.
Yeah. No, it's reading and writing or wanting to write has always been part of my life, ever since I was a little kid. So, I was fortunate I grew up in a home where my dad was a huge avid reader. And my mom, who's 89 and still with us, she was a really big supporter of really anything I did. She was one of those moms who was super encouraging, but let me read stories to her, very non-judgmental that way. So I love to read to her. I love to look at my dad, his books on the shelves, and watch him read. So that was always part of, I don't know why, I was always drawn to books on the bookshelf, to the point that growing up, when I was really small still, I would walk past his bookshelves lined with, Ian Fleming books and George Simenon books and John le Carré. And I would fantasize or imagine that it was my book and my name on the spine of the book on the shelf. So I guess you could say I was definitely an avid writer and reader from an early age. So I had a great, from that perspective, I had a great childhood at being encouraged to write and express myself. So,
did you have any imaginary friends that you talked to?
I guess I didn't really. I kind of told stories about that I was more popular sometimes than I was to my parents. Because I had a knack for getting into trouble, but when I wasn't getting into trouble, I would make up stories about people I knew or things I did. When I was like 9, 10, 11 years old. I can remember that for some reason, but no real imaginary friends in the sense that, making coffee or tea for somebody sitting next to me. So.
And were you very outgoing? Were you sports oriented or were you okay?
Yeah, I was very outgoing. I played hockey growing up. So I was very team sports oriented, hockey, touch football, things like that as a youngster. And then I got into some more individualistic sports. So I was, did things like rock climbing and
Cool.
stuff like that. But it was a combination. I like to I didn't mind being by myself, but I had a pretty decent circle of friends, one or two really good friends up until my teens, and then hung around with a gang of friends through my teens. So a little bit of both. But I like the company of people. Even though I like my own company better sometimes.
But you're pretty social. So talk to us about your first career, which has been quite
As a medic. Yeah. What was that?
Yes,
how did you get into that? What drew you to that? And it had a lot of moving parts throughout your career. You did you wore a lot of hats.
Yeah.
I did. And what drew me to that career, it's a good question, because I was interested in policing from a very early age, but I also knew very early on that my eyesight was pretty crappy. I did not have good eyesight. So I knew I wouldn't probably make policing from a visual acuity standpoint. So, but at the same time, growing up, I became a lifeguard. I loved swimming. I fell in love with a lifeguard when I was like 14 or 15, and that drew me to become a lifeguard myself when I got older. And the lifeguarding got me into what they called guard competitions or lifeguard competitions. So I was competitive at lifeguarding, which is, you have scenarios where you rescue people or do first aid or whatever. And that got me really interested in the first aid and medical side of things.
Sure.
And I actually went to university for phys ed, physical and health education, but dropped out after first year because I had a buddy who was in the paramedic program, and I liked that better. So I dropped out of university, went to college to do the paramedic program, or what was called the ambulance and emergency care program back then, and became a paramedic. So I was a paramedic in Toronto for over 30 years. As Doug
Wow.
said, I wore many hats. I was involved in tactical paramedicine. So I was a SWAT medic with the Ontario Provincial Police. I was a specialist in chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosives incident response. That's always a mouthful.
Wow.
Riot squad, things like that. And then I got involved. I became the province of Ontario's disaster response team commander. So yeah, lots of hats as a paramedic. I always, I found myself getting bored if I was doing the same thing over and over again. Repetition just kind of made me unsettled a little bit. So I always looked for ways to challenge myself as a medic and found new ways to get trained and educated, and then new pursuits. So it always made me look for other opportunities and new opportunities. So
Well,
So does that
as a medic with a SWAT team,
yeah.
what exactly did you do? Let's say they're called out on a mission. Maybe it's go extract somebody from a house or something like that.
yeah.
What actually do you do, and where's your position in all of this?
Yeah, so it depends on what the call is, what the nature of the call is. So anything from, the most common call that we'd be called out for would be a barricaded subject. So a bad guy's done something, or an alleged bad guy has done something, or allegedly done something, and they're hiding out in the house. They don't want to be caught. Or the dead guy's on the front lawn and they kind of know who did it. So, the police will stage around the house, and of course you bring in negotiators to try to bring somebody in. So in terms of a situation like that with a hostage taking or a barricaded subject, the role of the tactical medic is to be near the front line, but not directly in the line of fire. So normally where the commander, there's a command post or a tactical operations center. So we're normally the one line back from the front line in a situation like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if something happens, a tactical medic has the training, tools to be able to go onto the front, like to go into a hot zone when things are still active, when there's still an active shooter, when there's still an active situation. Whereas a civilian medic, on my day job as a civilian medic, I would stage and wait for the police to clear it all. And when it's safe to do so, then the medics would go in. As a tactical medic, when I put that hat on, my job was to go in when things were still going south. So,
Wow.
sometimes if we were actually going in through the front door with a battering ram, I could be in the stack. I was in the stack multiple times. If there's
Explain that to us. Explain stack. Is that like right behind the ram coming in?
Yeah, so when the SWAT team lines up at the door and you've got the guy with a battering ram who hits the door, and the next 3 or 4 officers go in, and really the point of tactical or SWAT, special weapons and tactics, is to use overwhelming force and a show of overwhelming force to make people think twice about engaging the police.
Right.
And really about making them panic into freezing and not being able to do anything, or into giving up. That's really the purpose behind hitting something hard and fast with a lot of numbers. And so that's called a stack. And occasionally when we were going into a house, I'd be at usually the second last position in the stack, and we'd go in. And the purpose really of a tactical medic is to take care of the police officer. So if something happens to an officer, if they go down, there's a medic right there who can apply a tourniquet or can address an airway situation or a major bleed or whatever. But the SWAT medic, the tactical medic's primary job is officer rescue and officer, taking care of the officer. Secondarily, we're there for anybody else.
Are you armed?
No. Most SWAT medics in North America are not armed. Now, that's a generalization, and those discussions are ongoing. But in Canada, we're definitely not. And in most of the states, definitely not armed.
Okay.
That's kind of cool.
I imagine you've gotten into some, I imagine you've gotten into some hairy situations.
Oh, yeah.
Can you relate one of them that you particularly wake up screaming at night about?
Yeah, well, yeah, I still have a few of those situations for sure. But, it's also fun. Fun. I hope the listeners don't take this the wrong way, but one of the highlights of my career was I pronounced the guy dead using a bomb robot. So
Oh,
we're
sure.
literally, we couldn't access the scene because there was still a potentially active shooter barricaded inside a house, but there was someone lying in the driveway of the home, and we're trying to figure out, should we be staging a rescue or are they non-viable at this point? So after
Hmm.
a while, we ended up, I'm back this is a situation where I was back at the command post with the staff sergeant and the inspector and the negotiator trying to call into the home and see if we could talk to the person allegedly barricaded inside. And finally, we made the decision to roll a bomb robot up with a high definition camera and take a close look at the subject lying on the ground, and made the determination that his injury, his penetrating cranial injury, was a non-survivable injury. So it was
Mm.
able, from that point on, you could slow things down, and you didn't have to expose officers to risk,
Sure.
putting them directly in
Sure.
the line of
Well,
fire.
I have an image of this device rolling out there and holding a mirror under his nose,
Yeah, exactly. There's a mirror mist. There's a fog. Yeah.
Exactly.
And actually,
I
it was
was
it was winter. It was the middle of the winter, so it actually would have worked fine with that.
Exactly.
I
Uh,
was in well over in the Middle East doing a USO tour with the military, and they gave us a demonstration on those bomb robots there. And that, I mean, it's just amazing what those devices can do. It just
yeah.
saves a lot of lives these days. So
Yeah, and that
that's
was 10 or 15 years ago, and that was a pretty high-tech tool back then, but I know they're even more wildly
yeah.
capable now.
So
Yes.
does this work experience factor into what you write?
Yeah, it very much does. I'm not Alex. Alex is not me. But I gave her the backstory of being a combat medic. So she's got that medical training, medical experience, as well as the shooter experience. And so a lot of the times, when she's doing things, I put her in situations where she has to call on her, her medical training is put to use somewhat. I mean, I don't get way too technical, but I always find a reason to make sure I could put her to use medically, because I think that's a skill that she brings that a lot of protagonists don't necessarily have. But it
Sure. Yeah.
also allows me to, um, you know, when we when I give her thoughts, or when I'm making her think or reflect on things in her own past, I'm
Mhm.
able to delve into my own experience, the good and the bad, the moments of fear, of whatever it is, the moments of liking working with the public or not liking working with the public. Her opinions. I get to give her my own opinions about a lot of things as well, and that comes directly from 30 years working with the public in a high
Mhm.
risk environment. So I do get to draw on my background to write Alex.
So you write a woman. That's so interesting. Why did you choose to write a woman and not a man?
So first of all, I'm primarily a pantser, meaning I write by the seat of my pants. I don't come up with an outline. I
Mm.
don't know what my story is going to be before I sit down and start, literally until I sit down and start writing. And early on, before Alex, I had started, I don't know, half a dozen, 10 different stories, all featuring a male protagonist. And as I
Mm.
wrote these male protagonists, and they were police officers, police detectives, undercover cops, reporters, I started with different characters and just started writing. And I would get maybe 4, 5, 6, 10 pages in, and I enjoyed the writing, but the story wasn't going anywhere. And I found
Mhm.
that when I was writing these male characters, I was imbuing them or infusing them with this almost this Humphrey Bogart, Maltese Falcon kind of voice. And
Okay.
so they sounded very, detective noir, almost
Mhm.
caricatures of real detectives. So I wasn't finding my voice when I was writing those characters.
Interesting.
But one day I started writing a story featuring this female Interpol investigator investigating a crime in Amsterdam. A body turned up, floating in one of the canals in Amsterdam. Again, I didn't know where the story was going. All I know is there's a body floating in a canal, and there's, Dutch police on the scene. And then this female character pulls up, and she's an Interpol investigator, and there's some nexus to something else, blah, blah, on and on. But when I started writing this female character, whose name, as it turns out, was Rachel Danaher, was her name. I know that because I recently looked it up. But that was the origin of Alex. And even though
Ah.
that story didn't go anywhere, I found and actually I was writing it as a screenplay. So
Mhm.
10 pages in on this screenplay, I'm thinking, I really like this character, Rachel, as it turned out to be. So nothing happened for a couple more years, but then as I started writing the next story, I brought in, and again, it wasn't contrived. I wasn't thinking I was going to bring in a female character, but in came Alex Martell, and the story took off. And that was the first, and then actually that even began as a screenplay. But as I got into it, about 20, 30 pages in, I realized I was enjoying writing the character in the story, but I wanted to write it in long form as a long form
Mhm.
story. And that's why I actually translated what was a screenplay at that point into the first Alex Martell novel.
Wow. And was that Perfect Shot, your current
It
book?
actually was, so it actually was a story called By a Long Shot back there on the shelf.
Okay.
And it was the first manuscript I went down to Thriller Fest with in 2018.
Oh, cool.
So I actually got my agent with that story. John Talbot is my agent. So I
Yes,
got
yes.
my agent, John Talbot, with, sorry about the emoji. Apparently emojis now are big in Facebook and everything else. Or
I
anyway.
know, I know.
So I got my agent with that manuscript, and then we went out on submission with By a Long Shot in February of 2020, which, as you probably
Oh,
recall,
Yeah.
yes, right
was the
before
start of the
lockdown.
pandemic. So we
Yeah.
pulled that manuscript back from submission, and then I was writing Perfect Shot at the time. So we finished Perfect Shot, and that became the first one that I went out with,
Yeah.
and was the first one that got picked up.
Wow.
And it's
So,
been recognized. Tell us about that. How
yes.
did that come about, and how much whiskey did you drink?
Do you mean the ITW nomination?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, um, I was blown away actually. I had no idea obviously it was coming, and then one day I saw a post on Twitter, and it was the ITW Twitter feed, and they posted that myself and four other novels, I think four other novels, were finalists for the
Mm.
ITW Best First Novel Award, and it literally blew me away. I was thrilled. I mean, The Peacock and the Sparrow was there, by I.S. Barry, Alana Barry. So it's a terrific novel. So I was really thrilled to be included in that group of first debut novels.
And then you will find out at the end of May who actually takes the award.
Yeah, the end of May or 1st of June or whatever it is. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's pretty
yeah.
exciting. That's still coming up.
That's so very exciting. Well, we're going to wish you the best of luck and keep our fingers crossed for you.
Thank you.
It's just such an honor to be nominated that you've already won. I mean,
Yeah, I
really.
mean, it's
Yeah.
thrilling because, it's not exactly like coming full circle, but it feels comfortable like that because the
Yes.
ITW gave me my start, in a way,
Yeah.
because I was dabbling in writing, and it wasn't until I made the decision to attend my first Thriller Fest in 2018
Yep.
and Pitch Fest in 2018.
Mm.
Once I made that decision 6 months before that, that made me buckle down to finish my first manuscript. That was the first, so By a Long Shot was the first manuscript I'd ever finished.
Did I work with you on your pitch? It seems
Yes,
like
you did.
I remember that. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
you
then you have
were
your agent.
among the very first people I met at Thriller Fest was yourself, Kim Howe, Anthony
Yeah.
Franz, aka Alex Finley, Simon
Yes.
Gervais, and
Yeah.
everybody there, Heather Graham, everybody there was so welcoming, including yourself. And I even bounced my pitch off you. It was a terrible pitch because I really, I don't know
It's
why I get
hard.
nervous. I don't know why I get nervous when I can be in the worst, most high stress situation and perform no problem. I'm in my element, life and,
Right.
but you ask me to come up with a line that I'm trying to convince somebody, whether it's an elevator pitch or a pitch to an agent, and I find it one of the most terrifying experiences. So I know I pitched to you a few times and you gave me some great advice, which I'm still grateful for.
Well, over the years, they've done many studies on what people's greatest fears are. And I don't think in 25 years it's changed. It's public speaking.
Hmm.
And that's a
Yes.
form of public speaking when you're sitting down and pitching your idea to an agent. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, am I saying this out loud? Am I worthy?
Yes. Yeah.
Do I sound stupid? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's taken years for me to get comfortable in that speaking in front of a crowd role. I remember, many years ago, it wasn't part of my job as a paramedic to do that. So I didn't have to do it. And the odd time I found myself in a situation where I'd have to stand up in front of a group and pitch an idea or even ask a question sometimes, I just remember the sense of fear and my heart rate, zipping up to 120 doing
Yeah.
it. And it's only, with practice over the years when I've had to take on a role where as a manager, you're standing up at meetings, selling ideas or pitching ideas or even validating, I was the emergency medical manager for the Pan Am Games, which is the Toronto 2015 Pan and Para-Pan Am Games.
Yeah.
So for 18 months, I was the emergency medical manager leading up to the game. So all the planning and everything else. And of course, all my meetings are in front of, government officials and ministers and bureaucrats. So you quickly have to get a handle on, your nervousness and
presenting,
insecurity
right?
when
Yeah.
you're talking to those kinds of crowds. So with practice, it got a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's, I mean, truly remarkable. So tell us where we can buy your books.
Well, fortunately, this distribution of Perfect Shot has been awesome. I mean, I'm with Minotaur Books, St. Martin's Press.
Yes.
And literally, it's available in Barnes and Noble all across the United States. Our big bookseller up here is called Chapters Indigo Booksellers up here. Again, all of it available all across the country up here. Costco in Canada was carrying it in all their stores as well.
Oh, there you are.
And of course, Amazon. So indie booksellers are carrying it. The big chains are carrying it. I've been really lucky with distribution, and I'm very happy to be able to say that.
Well, St. Martin's published my first book, and they're wonderful people, wonderful people. I had the great Marcia Markland as my editor, who I still love to this day. But yeah, they're good people. But you have another book in this series that's coming out. When's that going to be out? And tell us a little bit more about that.
So Out in the Cold comes out November 12th of this year. And it's a series, obviously a series continuation of the Alex Martel series. It takes place more or less on the heels of the conclusion of the events in Perfect Shot. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to say, obviously Alex is in it, but I don't want to say who else might be in it, so as not to give away the ending of Perfect Shot. But yeah, it's a continuation of the Alex Martel story, and it's Alex back at her, shenanigans and antics, beating up bad guys and saving the world.
Of course.
Of course. Of course. Of course. I love it. I love it. So we'll have to have you back on when that book's coming out for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
This is such a great interview. You're very interesting. And thank you for all of your service as a first responder and doing such amazing work. I mean, that's very dangerous for many years. So
Thanks, Kathleen.
appreciated. So yeah.
And thank you for writing great books.
The mortgage, so it's all good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you for being here. I mean, this has just been wonderful. We always have a good time chatting at the conferences and stuff. And it's good to chat with you here. And we interviewed Meg Gardner, and I'll say this to you also. Meg reminded me of something that her first novel, she won the was it Thriller Award or the Edgar Award? I forget what. The Edgar Award she won for best first, and she said, she reminded me, she said when she came off the stage, I was there because I was on the committee, I think, and I hugged her and I said, your life has just dramatically changed. And I say the same to you. By being nominated for award, it stamps things. It changes everything. Not only the way the writing world and the publishing world look at you, but the way you look at yourself. Because it's validation that is hard earned. We know that, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, and it is a great feeling, and I'm grateful for it. And like you said, even if I don't win, just to be nominated is an absolute honor, and just a real high, just thinking of it that way.
Exactly, and good luck with it, and enjoy it. Enjoy this moment because it's fun. It's fun times. Yep.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you have to wallow in it. It's awesome.
I'm wallowing away.
Good. And I'm going to ask our viewers to please click the thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm to get these interviews out. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can bring you a lot more of these interviews. And again, Steve Urszenyi, great to have you. And we'll have you back soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Doug, Kathleen.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for sharing with us. And we appreciate it. So that wraps up this episode of Get to Know on the Outliers YouTube channel. So hang in there, and until next time, and we will see you then.